Now we have the aerofoil geometry in here in the simulation panel. And the task for now is to create meshes around the airfoil. Okay, and do you still remember the procedure? And now what we need to do is to first produce parts, because now it's just CAD model, we need to create parts. So we need to right click at the 3D CAD model, and then we choose new geometry part and use the default selections. And now you can see that all the airfoil profiles are showing, right? And the next step is to assign regions for the simulation. Okay, so we again click body 2 and choose assign parts to region. Do you still remember we need to change here the second option, create a boundary for each part surface. This allows us to have different surface to set up the boundary conditions. Okay, if it's applied, and we will see it's showing up in the region. Okay, so through the previous simulation, we already know we need to set up the boundary conditions, but we will do it later. And the task for now is to create boundaries. So what do we do? Because it's a 2D mesh or 2D simulation, we are doing something slightly different. Okay, so we can go to the geometry, parts, and here are operations. Okay, so we used to have the mesh created through continuous, but since we are doing 2D mesh, we are doing slightly different things. In operations, we right click and choose mesh, batch for 2D meshing. Okay, so we select body 2. Okay, and because you can see the there is a warning sign, and it means there's no mesh yet. Okay, so then we do it, right click again and choose automated mesh 2D. Okay, so there are several models, and we choose a polygonal measure and a prism layer measure. And we already know what is a prism layer. It's used to resolve the boundary layer. Okay, so all the two options are warning. You can see the warning. And there's something extra we need to do. In the automated mesh 2D, we need to choose the input part, assign the part. Okay, so we need to, there's no option yet. So let's first execute this one and then delete and choose body 2. Okay, so in order to let the body 2 showing, we first need to execute batch for 2D meshing, and then we delete it. Okay, before we set up everything, for example, the base size, we can start the meshing procedure. We execute, and now we should be able to see something. Okay, let's go to this icon and show the mesh. So this is a mesh. We can see it's a polygon mesh, and it's refined in here and also in here. That's prism layer, because now this inlet and outlet are still recognized as wall, so there's prism layer introduced. So we don't like this prism layer because there's no boundary layer, so we can just change the inlet to velocity inlet and outlet to pressure outlet. We'll have details set up later, but for now let's regenerate the mesh. Okay, so execute all. So now you can see the prism layer are deactivated. Okay, so we need to refine the geometry. So you can see the airfoil is only resolved by a few grids because the base size is too large. You can see the base size is 1 meter, which is very large, and our airfoil cannot be properly resolved. So let's choose 0.02. Okay, and we can reactivate, execute. So it takes longer time, and we can see final mesh, and the profile is resolved now. And this is the overview of the simulation domain. It looks quite good now, but we still need to refine the boundary layer. Okay, so we need to go to the set up the prism layer, total thickness, and we can set up the absolute. So for now, it's 0.6 millimeter. I think it's a little bit too thin. Let's see, 3. So 3 centimeter. That could be reasonable. 3 centimeter for 1 meter cord aerofoil. Okay, 3 centimeter. That's the absolute size of the prism layer. And the number of prism layer, let's say 21 layers. And the stretching 1.5 and maybe 1.3. Okay. Now all set, we can reactivate the measure. So you can see the boundary layer mesh around the aerofoil. Okay, and now we can see this is the mesh we have. Looks quite reasonable. And if you want to find a mesh, and you can make the base size smaller, or the minimum surface size, change that, and there are different parameters to play with. For the purpose of demonstration, I'm just keeping this setup and I use this mesh. And in the next step, we will set up the boundary condition.